what agents think buyers and sellers want, according to the numbers, what buying and sellers actually want, and then what's an ERP. All in this episode of Brokers Open Podcast. Let's get started. So Justin, buddy, it is Podcast Friday, man. What are you doing?
Podcast Friday is a good Friday. The weather's beautiful out this morning, so I'm stoked. For whatever reason, in the middle of all this coronavirus stuff, I feel like today is like the first day that actually feels like a Friday.
Yeah, no doubt.
I don't know why.
Yeah.
How about you? How's everything going?
Yeah, good. That might be because the governor's speaking up, right? So the governor's speaking up, saying, "Hey, we're gonna shift things. We're not out of this, but we're gonna shift it just a little bit." Maybe that's part of us getting that feeling that things are normalizing just a little bit, right? And then we can keep track of days, but day is night, and night is day, and Friday is Tuesday, and all that stuff. Man, it is confusing as hell. I'm not kidding.
I was joking with my wife last night. She didn't find it funny. I actually told my brother too. My brother's standing here.
What's up, Kyle? How are you?
Kyle, come on in.
What are you doing, man?
He's going to get a haircut. He hasn't had a quarantine haircut in a little while. So.
Oh, nice.
He's going to go get a haircut over somebody's offering an incentive down the street to an illegal haircut.
Right. An under the counter haircut, man. I like it. He's going to a speakeasy for a haircut.
Yeah. No. I mean, I think I was joking with my wife last night that we're gonna invite a whole bunch of people over, and my neighbors are gonna flip out. We're gonna be cranking music up, and there's gonna be 15 cars outside my house. And
right. You just need a valet, man. That's gonna trick everybody. Have a valet just kind of spread the cars out a little bit down the street.
Pull them in front of my neighbor's house.
That's right. Cops show up, put a yellow notice on their door. That's awesome. So we're gonna get to your T-shirt in just a second, Justin. But Kyle, you just finished a transaction with Justin, right? How did that go?
It was great. It was a
good
process.
Segue.
I was my first time home buyer. Process that I've never been through before.
Nice.
It couldn't have been easier. I mean, we looked at a number of different houses, and we were talking a little bit before, about the transaction process. And
right.
The biggest thing to me was obviously my brother. Growing up with him my whole entire life was trust, but he made that process seamless. I mean, everything that I looked at, everything that I had was, it was a trust in him and a trust in his professionalism to make sure everything got done correctly, on time, and, in the best interest of myself.
Bogey.
So that's
I got Bogey in the office.
Bogey in the house. What's up? So
Bogey, stop it.
So that's so Kyle, your timing is absolutely perfect, because that's actually what we were gonna discuss this morning, is exactly that. And so so I know that so Kyle, you're in the insurance world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one time when we were talking, you brought up something called ERP, right? And you were discussing the relationship with people with ERP, and it's educate, reframe, and what was the last one? Position. Tell us for just a second what that means whenever you're building trust with people.
Yeah, and so regardless of transaction, real estate, insurance, sales in general, if you're going to buy a car, you want to make sure that the person that you have on your side of the table, is knowledgeable, is a subject matter expert, someone who can, look at a situation and diagnose it through and through, and so being on my side, so, we can kind of transition back to my real estate transaction with Justin,
right.
And me being, to be honest, very clueless in that process,
right.
And he did my ERP process without even knowing it. He educated me. He educated me on what I was looking at, and he reframed my original real mindset around the real estate transaction, and not necessarily that he positioned himself to be the solution, but he absolutely was.
Yeah.
You know, he was that comfort and trust throughout the whole process that made it so seamless. You know, and I had 100% confidence in any and everything that he said to me, you know, because he educated me up front how this is going to work. You know, this is A to Z process.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You know, he's we're going to let you get to your legal haircut before the window closes on that, and Justin's going to tell us a little bit more about the shirt and everything. But I just thought it was funny that you walked into the office and literally that's what we were just discussing, and you busted in with, hey, you know, this was the number one thing. That's absolutely perfect. I'm glad it went really smooth. And so if people need help with insurance, how do they get in touch with you, man?
Hey, reach out to my brother. If they know my brother, he can connect them. You know, so
Good.
I do all commercial insurance. You know, nothing,
Oh, nice.
No personal lines or anything like that. Strictly commercial.
That's good stuff.
He brought up a good point, and I know that we're going to dig into a little bit about this, but I want your honest opinion, Kyle. Before you go, what was your public's opinion of what a realtor does or who a realtor is? I want raw feedback.
I think there's such a stigma around your guys' job, you know. And my phrase was all, you know, and then this sounds, you know, bad or unprofessional, but you know, anyone can get a real estate license, you know, but it's just the same in my business. You know, anyone can get an insurance license and sell insurance.
Well, getting an insurance license is harder than getting a real estate license. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big time.
Was, you know, the stigma around the whole process. You know, who to trust, because there's, I mean, how many realtors, you know, does the average person know? You know, and how many people actually know what the hell they're talking about?
Yep.
Probably 2%.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Tops.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was, you know, the original thought process that I had around, you know, real estate was always, you know, and this is going to sound bad, you know, any house mom can get a real estate license.
Yeah, but that's
you know, but how can you prove yourself to be that professional, you know, to be that person, to be that trusted source? That's
so
really,
huge.
It's a huge difference.
It is. We're actually gonna get into that. So what Justin and I are gonna talk about is we're gonna roll up and discuss some specific numbers of some things and everything, and that's right there at top of the list. So that's why I wanted to make sure you had your chance to talk about it, because you buzzed in before your haircut to talk to your brother. So I wanted to make sure you had a chance to do that. Pun intended on buzzed in, right?
Yeah, literally.
Well, I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. We appreciate you coming in.
See you, man. Yeah,
So
keep going on that. Expand on that, Matt.
Well, so first, man, you got to tell me about that shirt, man. I love that shirt. Let's get into your T-shirt for just a second here. That's good
There's
stuff.
a dual approach behind why I wore this.
Right. Let's hear it.
First, obviously, it's folds of honor, and it's each shirt, you know, you give back to military charity, and that's definitely near and dear to my heart. But secondly, not as important, but where I bought this was Nashville, Tennessee, with yours truly, Matt Vi.
What up?
And this is our last little hoorah before coronavirus.
Yeah.
We were at the Berkshire Hathaway National Convention,
and it was just breaking out. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just getting started. So I remember flying back in. I remember our Erie flight from Nashville back to Tampa, because it exploded media-wise when we were in Nashville, and we were kind of like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah. And we didn't think that it was as big of a deal or as real, because of course we're not watching the news. So like a 3 or 4 day period, we kind of had a news gap. It was a little bit of nothing. We see some stuff on TV and we're like, hey, what's going on? And people are kind of buzzing about it a little bit and everything. We get to the airport in full airplanes.
Yeah.
And man, people got masks on, and everything was it all just exploded at that point, right? And we get back and we're like in this whirlwind as soon as we got back. It was pretty crazy. And then come to find out, you know, there was a couple of people, you know, in Nashville that had it and all that kind of stuff. predominant people in Nashville that had it and everything. So it turned out to be a big deal. Didn't you got your wife one of those too, didn't you?
I did.
You
Yeah.
get
She
one?
loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
that's a
mean,
great
I
stuff.
definitely, I wore the t-shirt just because I like the organization. But more than anything, I bought this before the coronavirus as a optimistic purchase, and I'm wearing it again today as an optimistic symbol
I love
for
it.
me and you.
Yeah, that's how you waved hi and goodbye to Corona. How about that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. So let's dig a little bit more into that. I love that Kyle stopped by. Let's dig a little bit more into that.
Yep.
So what do you think? We're gonna get into the numbers at the end of this and kind of how you weaponize this if we're talking military stuff, how you weaponize it in your business. But before we get to that, what do you think that agents think is the most important services that they offer, right? Because I had a really cool experiment that I did one time, and I want to dig into that. But so managing a bunch of agents and still selling the hell out of the real estate and being a boss the way that you do, and I know you know a bunch of people that are really productive in real estate even outside of your office. What do you think that they think is important to the clients? What is it that the common theme that you're hearing that's important to the clients or customers that they're dealing with?
My head goes so many different places, but my first thought, because of the most amount of questions that I answer when it comes to agents going on appointments, taking out buyers, going on listing appointments, their immediate conversation goes directly to fear. Am I capable of listing this property? I don't really know what I'm doing, or I've never sold in this area. I've never sold in this price range. There's fear there. There's also fear in terms of commission. So there's clearly a separation in what value is being brought and what value is thought to be brought. So that's an interesting kind of gap, and those are the first two things that come to my mind. How about you?
So I was and I think I brought this up before. I was on I directed a panel of top producers of a bunch of agents, right? I think the minimum was probably $15 or $20 million. Everybody it was up from there. And it was talking about services and what they offer and how they differentiate themselves. And so I asked everybody in the room to write down on a piece of paper 3 things that they did that made them unique compared to anyone else in the market, and what did they specialize in with the customers that they were dealing with, right?
Right.
So they all, this is top producers, so this is a big part of their game, right? So they all start writing things down, and I started with the person on my left. Before I got halfway around the table of, I don't even remember, might have been 10 or 12 team leaders and all that kind of stuff. Before I got halfway around the table, I finally said, does anybody have anything that hasn't been mentioned yet? And the answer was no. So all of these things that everybody thought was making them so much different than everybody else, all the other people were already saying, hey, I do staging, and my my photos are really better than everybody else, and here's how I handle commission, and this is why this is different, and my website is better, and my this and my that, and I negotiate better than everybody else, and I sold more homes in this neighborhood. All of those things were things that were coming out, and the reality is before we got halfway around the table, everyone was exposed that they were literally having the same conversations about what they do service-wise for everybody else, and it was all the same.
Wow.
So two things happen with that. For them, I mean, I hear it, right? Because I coach people, you coach people, so you hear that the things are the same. The difference is how well they discuss and demonstrate those things to the customers that they're dealing with, right? How refined are they? That really is the
Sure.
difference with those people compared to the other people that are sitting down and saying, oh, I do staging. Okay, so how you explain staging, and then how it relates to photographs and how it relates to those things. So these were all services that they felt like they offered that were extremely important. But there was one that we're going to kind of talk about whenever we get into the customer side of it, that all of them kind of hit on in one way or another. And I really think that's what differentiates those agents from a lot of other agents. So I want to make sure that we get into that. But you mentioned money. The money part is so important in all of this. How much? So the customer doesn't want to spend any more than they have to. The seller wants to make as much as they can, and both of them want you to make what they perceive which is 3 different numbers, to be a fair amount on that transaction.
Right.
So if it's a listing that you've got, what the seller thinks is fair, what you're going to get paid, compared to what the buyer thinks is fair, what you're going to get paid is different than what you think that you're going to get paid, right? So money is
Right.
always kind of in the middle of that. So money is a big factor on that. Going back to the numbers, because I went to Real Trends and I went to National Association of Realtors. Going back to the money part of this, let me let you in on a little something, everybody, and I'm going to spoil this. And Justin and I both knew this when we first touched on this. Money is not that big of a fact. It matters, but money is not the biggest determining factor in why they would use you. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. So Justin, what do you think the sellers and buyers worry about? What do you think that they're concerned with the most?
So there's definitely, I know that the consumer nowadays is probably more information savvy, more data savvy than they've ever been. However, there is a massive gap between actually what goes on in a real estate transaction from beginning to end and what a consumer thinks happens. So I think that, you know, when I look at that, so from the consumer end, looking back at the real estate person, communication, adequate communication back to the agent and vice versa probably means the biggest difference in the world. So communicating timelines, communicating how things are going to be going down, because this process can be long, it can be arduous. There's a lot of moving parts to it. You know, more times than not, it's your biggest financial transaction of your life.
Yeah.
Multiple times over, if you're buying and selling houses the rest of your life. I mean, you know, those are big things. And so for an agent to, I guess, underestimate communicating that is a bad thing, because we do this every day. We have, you know, transactions, clients, things are flying around. It's like, no, this is just business as usual. I got it. Don't worry about it. Well, that's not good enough. You know, so from the client's point of view, I think earning your keep, earning your commissions, really, when you dumb it down to one thing, it comes to communication.
Absolutely. And knowing what, and you touched on this, and Kyle actually talked about this a second ago, knowing what their desire is, knowing what they're really trying to accomplish. So for some people, you know, I touched on money just a second ago. For some people, money might be the most important thing. In general, it's not, because some people need to get to Texas, right? They're just done. They're done being here. They got to get to a job, whatever, school starting, all that. Some people it's school zone. Some people, they have to have a mother-in-law suite, right? Because the person that took care of them their whole life, it's their time now to take care of somebody else. Money isn't going to factor in as much on that if it's the perfect place for them. So all of those things. So what you're talking about, communicating and actually listening, man, that is 100%. Probably the most important thing in the customer's eyes is my agent really listening to what I'm telling them.
The biggest issue I think with that realtors have is that realtors go into listing appointments and realtors go into scenarios with buyers, and they assume that each Griff,
get in my daughter's room.
They assume that each transaction is the same and it should be treated the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's
so
not.
It's not. And each client is not the same. The process is not the same. It's easy for us to rationalize that process and try to kind of make things black and white, which is a good way to do it. But everything needs to be its own separate entity. But it's for realtors, you know, it's just pushed into one segment, right?
Right. And we try to, you know, and we try to take the emotion out of it. Right. We're trying to, like, hey, this is a business thing. We're dealing with this. We've got it figured out. Right. And the reality of it is we can't pull the emotion out of it, because that's why they're making a big part of the decision that they're making, at least in residential. That's why they're making a big part of the decision they're making. It is because of the emotion to it. You know, I think another thing is, you know, sellers especially, right? Buyers maybe not as much, but probably still some, but maybe not as much as sellers for sure. Sellers don't want the agent to know that they don't know exactly what's going on. I think sellers are a little bit more protective of it, because they're thinking about the money that's being paid and where does it all generate from. And even if they don't know it, the seller kind of has an idea that real estate starts with them being ready, willing, and able, right? They innately, they know that, right? If they don't know it, top of mind consciousness. So So the reality is, there's a scale of 180 degrees, right? Some sellers truly do not need a real estate agent. There's people out there that don't need a real estate agent, right? And there's a segment of the market that doesn't. And then there's a segment of the market that absolutely 100% is like, I would never try to do this without a real estate agent, right?
Right.
And those are on 180 degrees. Those are both ends of the scale. The big part of the scale in the middle is the people that think they have a pretty good idea of what's going on, but they either don't, or they don't want anybody to know that they don't.
Yeah.
That's a big part of that. That's a big part of that 180 degree scale from one side to the other. And so
an ego thing.
It is an ego thing, or it's I've done it before, so I know how to do this. Well, if you've done it before in Texas and you come here, it is not the same. It isn't, right? And an agent that tells you that it is, run. Don't walk away from them. Run. It's not the same. There's little things that are just flood insurance, right? What tax and what can be homesteaded, what can't be homesteaded, what other exemptions are available from, all of those things all make a difference where you are, right?
Yeah.
So having an expert, and so let's dig in a little bit to the numbers on some of this, and then we'll talk about how agents can really connect with their buyers and sellers and make a difference in helping them with this. So according to Real Trends and National Association of Realtors, this is the aggregated numbers on this. So providing good data, okay, 68%. So what they did is they went to buyers and sellers and said, what is important to you in a transaction? And they aren't eliminating. So if they ask Matt doesn't get to pick one and then have to put a number 2 and a number 3 and a number 4 in place. They just said, what is important? Out of these things, which one's important? So 68% said providing good data, right? So they want accurate data more than
Makes
2/3 of the time. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The next thing was providing a good web search, which is 69%, right?
Yeah. So
if you would have asked this as an industry 10 years ago, we would have said, oh, that was 98%, right? A good web search is everything. And the reality is there's just good data all over the place, and there's bad data all over the place, right?
Yeah.
So the next thing was marketing. Okay. So what fell under marketing was marketing the property and being able to cut through the red tape on marketing. So you as a buyer's agent, being able to cut through the crap and know the market well enough to know that if the flyer says no HOA, that you actually know that there is an HOA in that situation, right? So it talked about the importance of understanding what marketing played in the transaction. Is what they
that's a vague topic too. I think that even if you ask different realtors, not even ask each individual consumer, and you ask just individual agents, what does marketing mean to you? You're going to get 1,000 different answers.
Absolutely. So I tell people all the time, you hear me say this, follow up and follow through, right? That's the difference of sales and marketing, right? And marketing is different than promoting. All of those things are different, right? And sometimes people just think it's all the same thing, and it is so far from the freaking same thing. And it bothers me whenever people are like, oh no, that's semantics. You're just using vocabulary. And I'm like, no, man. All of that is so much different. It's not even funny. And if you're in sales and don't, and if you're in sales and don't know that, look out, man. So now we take a big jump, right? So at 60, 68, 69, 71%, now we jump up to 82% of the people thought that negotiations were important.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So that's a big part. So that's money, right? But that's also terms. That's not just saying, hey, am I getting the most money or am I paying the least amount of money? That's also saying, did I get the electric fence for my dog because Fluffy doesn't need to run out of the yard? I'm worried. I love the house, but I want the electric fence. That's all included in negotiations, right? And I know that you're a boss at the numbers part. I know you're a boss at the negotiations part. We talk about it all the time. So you know how important that is, right?
I think that that's something that agents need to pay a little bit more attention to, because if I had to kind of take a survey of agents that I know, I'm not just talking about my office, I'm just talking about, like, let's say Pinellas County wide, I would say that the negotiation segment is probably where the most amount of agents are the most vulnerable.
I completely agree.
That's a great one. And I think that should be somebody's value add and differentiating factor more times than talking about the fancy magazine or talking about I mean, I hate to say it, having a huge, great brand is fantastic, and you need it behind you. I agree. It's part of the firepower. It's the ship you're riding in.
Right.
But man, that negotiating bit is so often swept under the rug.
Absolutely. And people, 82% of the time, people want to hear you discuss it. That's what this says. 82% of the time, right?
Yep.
So 84% of the time, what was the most important, and Kyle hit it. And so we didn't lead Kyle into this or anything like that. You know, we said, Kyle, we're getting ready to talk about this. You know, what is the, you know, what was the most important thing to you? You're in sales. Tell us the most important thing. And he said, man, I don't know the process. I know someone, I need to have someone I can trust. And guidance of the process came in at 84%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost the most important thing out of all the questions that were asked was, do I know, like, and trust the person? And are they going to walk me through the process? That's what ERP was about. Educate, reframe, and position, right? It was all about that.
I think that if realtors did a better job communicating the process and actually guiding their client through the transaction, there would be a lot less of a stigma surrounding realtors. That is that kind of like what Kyle said, that part-time, that low barrier to entry type of industry. There is a bad stigma around it. But I think that if people understood what really goes into a transaction, what really goes into a really good agent, there's a lot of things there, and there's a lot of talent there, and there's a lot of skills.
There is, and they should be proud of that. They should take pride in them leveling up their business with what they're doing. So let's that's actually what what we talked about, making sure that we did at the end of this, and talking about weaponizing the information that we've got, right? How do you apply this in battle every day? How do you make this happen? And so one of the things that you and I put our heads together on, and we said, look, what's something that they can grab on and be actionable with immediately? If you're getting testimonials from your buyers and sellers, okay, podcast land, listen to this part carefully, okay? If you're getting testimonials from your buyers and sellers, and they're going on the testimony, and they're just saying whatever the hell they want to say, right? They're just going, oh yeah, I know Joe for 12 years, and he whatever, and he's the greatest because he lived next door to me and in the same neighborhood, and we both ride motorcycles together. Nobody gives a shit about that. Nobody cares.
Right.
That's not going to get you more testimonials. What you need to do is you need to pull Joe aside, put your arm around him, and say, Joe, we're going to do a testimonial here in just a minute, and this is what I need you to do. I need you to mention how much I guided you through the process, and how much we talked about, and how much you trusted me, because we do ride motorcycles together, how much you trusted me in this process. So now your testimonial is framed around what 84% of the people want to hear, right?
Yep.
And so I know you do that in your business. You and I talked about that, right? The people that you know that are in your sphere of influence, that they are keyed up to have like-minded conversations. You do a ton of stuff in the luxury market, right? When people talk and you're not standing there, they talk about Justin being confidential with their information, right?
Right.
They talk about all of those things. And so so getting those testimonials and saying things that are about guidance of the process, about negotiations, hey Joe, tell me, speaking to the camera here, tell me a little bit about how negotiations went. And those are the testimonials that you use, right?
I think that, if realtors on every transaction, every client, if they looked at it and they said, my goal by the end of this transaction, when this is closed, I want to create a brand ambassador out of this client, that deals would go a lot better and the industry would be a lot better for it.
Wow. What a great point. What a great freaking point.
There's a big difference between a client or a potential client or a buyer or a seller and a brand ambassador. I mean, a brand ambassador, it's like, what a brand ambassador is.
Oh yeah. That's huge. And having that conversation with them on the front end, right? So whenever I used to sell, like back in 1924, whatever that was, right? So whenever I used to sell
Model Ts.
That's right. I would tell people all the time, listen, I want to do a great job in the transaction for you. And the reason why is because I can't retire off of a single transaction, right?
Right.
I want you to feel comfortable referring me to other people. If I do a fantastic job for you, are you willing to refer me to other people? I would say that at the beginning of the conversation. There were people that told me, no, I don't do that. Right. And most of the people were like, absolutely, Matt, you do a great job for me, because they felt like they were holding it over my head at that point. I wanted the bar raised that way, right? And they did. And before we got done with the transaction, I was saying things like, hey Joe, I promised, or you promised me, you said you were going to refer other people. You don't know anybody else that's selling. We're getting ready to close, dude. When are you going to send somebody to me? They loved having that conversation because I did a kick-ass job along the way, but because I pre-framed it. That's what we're talking about with this testimonial. Pre-frame guidance of the process, negotiations, marketing, providing good web information, and making sure you're providing good data. All of those things should be part of your testimonials, right?
Yeah, right. Agreed.
So, all right. So wrapping up. So what's the thought of the day here? We got a thought of the day. I'll put you on the spot.
This conversation kind of lit me up here. I like this.
Yeah.
I don't know. My first thought today, I worked out this morning, and there's a big mental aspect to kind of what I do and how I try to frame my ideas around my workouts. And today, specifically was mentally based on what I structured for myself, because I know it's really easy for people during these times and on Fridays to just kind of lay up, right? Yeah. So it's easy to take the easy way out today. It's easy to do 50% of what you would normally do during coronavirus because you're at home and you're relaxing. It'd be a lot easier just to flick the TV on. And my statement to myself today was, go the extra mile, do that extra task, do that little bit extra, because it's days like this, it's weeks like this, and you don't realize that stuff starts compounding. It's like, if you can just put in 1% extra a day, like we always talk about, just put in that little bit of extra effort today. What that compounds on, it's crazy. Because if you look at like time value of money, the TVM breakdown, you invest $20,000 when you're 10 years old, and what that looks like over your lifetime. Picture that time value of money, that same type of chart when it comes to effort and what you're doing. So that's my thought.
So that's an absolutely great one. And I don't know if everybody follows Bel Air Broker on your Instagram. Can you put that out there really quick about this?
Yeah.
So I know a bunch of people do, but I listen to your Bel Air Broker every morning. Absolutely, the stuff is just is fantastic on it. So and I know you hit on the mindset stuff, most of the time with all of that. How do people follow that?
Actually, so I have two. So I have Bel Air Broker as one, and then I have Justin Helmus, Real Estate Broker, as another. So two of them. Nice. But yeah, both of them offer probably similar type stuff, I guess. How about you? What's your thought?
Well, I'm going to piggyback on you. So that one was just great, but you also hit on something a little bit earlier. So I'm going to steal it. I'm going to repurpose it, right? A bunch of what agents think is important to them isn't necessarily what's important to the customer, because a lot of what they're concerned with is based on fear. That's an absolutely fabulous point. A lot of what agents do is they're worried about their own finances. They're worried about their own situation. They're worried about their own business and where their next deal is coming from and whatever, all of that, right? And I get it. This business is not about them, right? This business is about the customers that you have, right? So Zig Ziglar he was the one that said, you can have anything you want as long as you help as many other people have what they want, right? And so that's what this all boils down to. And as long as you're doing that, I think that these other things that we just talked about that are really important, if you're putting those first, if you're getting those testimonials, putting those first, if you eliminate the fear, I just think you're going to kill it. I think you're going to do well.
Fortune 500 companies, think about Fortune 500 companies running on fear as their motivator to do business. Can you imagine that? I mean, there's a difference between SWOT analysis and using your strengths and knowing what you're good at, but nobody operates on fear on an efficient level. You can use fear as a motivator. That's a totally different thing. That's a different subject. Right. But when people are constantly surrounded by fear in the industry that they're in, it's just going to swallow you up. I mean, it's just negative thoughts all the time. You're not going to get those listing appointments. You're not going to get those buyers. And people are wondering why. Is it my company? Is it me? Is it the way that I dressed that day? What did I say wrong? No, it's because you're fear-based and you don't realize that that's seeping through in everything that you're doing.
Scarcity will eat everything. Scarcity will eat everything you have if you allow it. Scarcity is a very hungry beast. So, all right. So what do people got to do? They got to like and subscribe, right? They got to click on the
Yep.
notification bell, and they got to share this as much as possible, right?
Please do. I think this is a really good piece. You know, Matt came up with this subject line when we came on today, and I just, you know, I was shocked that we haven't actually talked about this, because this is probably some of the most important information, if not the most important information that we've talked about on here. So I appreciate you bringing that up. So I think this is going to be well worth people's time to listen to.
Absolutely. And share it, guys. Share it. We want this to help the industry. This isn't about you just getting better. This is about the industry it's about the industry as a whole. Tell Bogey I said hey.
There's people across
Hey,
the street right now. He's just, yeah.
He said hey back. I love it.
He's pissed off. All right, guys. Podcast land. We love you. Thank you.
See ya.